The strangest UFO encounters ever recorded. What if the truth about alien life isn't buried in secret government vaults, or lost among distant stars, but woven into the uncanny, haunting stories we've dismissed as mere fantasy? These aren't tales of sleek spaceships or menacing grey aliens, but surreal encounters that feel like fevered dreams. Extraterrestrials flipping pancakes, robots adorned with blooming flowers, invisible barriers that chill the spine, or winged, Bigfoot-like beings soaring through the night, told with raw, unshakable conviction. Their voices tremble with awe, fear, and wonder, pulling us into the mystery. In this video, explore the uncanny UFO lore, where your heart races and beliefs falter, daring you to embrace the unthinkable. If you love strange true stories, mind-bending experiences, and the mysteries they leave behind, don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable UFO tales and hidden truths. The 2017 New York Times article, titled "Glowing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO" program, marked a pivotal moment in the global conversation around UFOs, now more commonly referred to as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena.
The revelations concerning the existence of the Pentagon's AATIP program are extraordinary.
For decades, tales of alien contacts and unexplained lights in the sky had been relegated to the fringes of pop culture and conspiracy theory circles. But this report, backed by credible sources and verifiable data, blew the lid off decades of secrecy and hesitation. It revealed the existence of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP. This shadowy Pentagon initiative had operated with a $22 million budget to investigate reports of unidentified aerial objects, most of which exhibited behaviors no known technology could replicate. Suddenly, the idea that we might not be alone in the universe, or that unknown technologies could be navigating our airspace, was no longer laughable. The article included videos released by the Department of Defense showing Navy fighter pilots encountering fast-moving, shape-shifting objects with no visible propulsion systems. These crafts performed maneuvers that defied the laws of inertia and gravity, turning at sharp angles at hypersonic speeds. Trained military personnel, some with decades of flight experience, were seen reacting with awe and confusion. Their testimonies added a level of seriousness and credibility that could no longer be ignored.
We have these incredible videos shot by Navy pilots giving irrefutable evidence that there is a technology out there that is beyond anything.
Following the report, public and political interest surged. Congressional hearings were held. Former high-ranking intelligence officials began speaking out. One of the most vocal advocates for transparency was Luis Elizondo, the former director of AATIP, who openly criticized the government's lack of action and insisted that the phenomena deserved serious scientific investigation.
It turned out later that it was the now famous AATIP program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. I was asked to join this effort because I needed some counterintelligence experience and security experience. The concern was that maybe the Russians or foreign adversaries were trying to penetrate what our organization was doing. And our organization was studying UFOs on behalf of the Pentagon and on behalf of the CIA and the intelligence community. It was, probably one of the closest guarded secrets until we went public with the fact that your taxpayer dollars were paying for a UFO investigation within the U.S. government, a formal program, a formal effort, and that this effort had been going on for a very, very long time.
In 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, released a preliminary assessment confirming that UAPs were real and unexplained, and acknowledged over 140 military reports that could not be attributed to conventional aircraft or atmospheric phenomena. What emerged from this was not just a confirmation of unidentified phenomena, but a cultural shift, as the mainstream opened up to the idea of something else out there. Many researchers, journalists, and enthusiasts turned their attention not just to the skies, but also to past stories and forgotten archives. Forgotten experiences, oddball cases, and stories once deemed too uncanny to take seriously were suddenly re-examined under a new light. Following the groundbreaking 2017 New York Times article, public fascination with unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, surged. What had long been a subject of mockery or relegated to the realm of fringe belief was suddenly thrust into the government confirmation. This momentum intensified when the US Department of Defense officially released several videos captured by Navy fighter pilots, showing unexplained objects performing maneuvers no known aircraft could replicate. These videos, Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Go Fast, became the cornerstone of the modern disclosure era. The Tic Tac video, recorded in 2004 by the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group off the coast of Southern California, showed a smooth, white, oval-shaped craft resembling a mint Tic Tac moving erratically and at lightning speeds. The object was tracked descending from 80,000 feet to sea level in under a second, then hovering with no visible propulsion, no wings, and no exhaust. Commanders like David Fravor, a seasoned fighter pilot, publicly stated that the craft displayed flight characteristics far beyond the capabilities of any known technology on Earth.
His mouth, and I'm kind of looking at the same thing. I go, dude, do you see that? What is that thing? And what we see is this white tic-tac looking object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. And it's moving around the disturbance, the white water that we see.
How big is this thing?
So, over time, it's about...
Similarly, the Gimbal video, filmed in 2015 by a Navy jet off the East Coast, captured a rotating, disc-shaped object that appeared to defy wind resistance and aerodynamics. Its eerie movement, tilting and spinning mid-air while remaining perfectly steady in its trajectory, left pilots audibly stunned. One pilot's voice can be heard on the recording exclaiming, "There's a whole fleet of them. They're all going against the wind. The wind is 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude." Then came Go Fast, which showed a small object flying just above the ocean at an incredibly high speed, hugging the water surface with incredible stability. The video included real-time data and thermal imagery, reinforcing the object's anomalous behavior. These weren't isolated events. The Pentagon admitted that such encounters occurred frequently, especially near sensitive military installations, nuclear sites, and aircraft carriers. Navy personnel reported that they were seeing UAPs on an almost daily basis for months at a time. These repeated sightings prompted new protocols within the US. Military for reporting UAPs, breaking decades of silence that had often discouraged pilots from coming forward. By April 2020, the Department of Defense declassified and officially released the 3 videos, confirming their authenticity but not offering any explanation for the objects captured. The move was unlike anything before. It was the first time the US government admitted that its military had seen and recorded objects flying in ways that couldn't be explained. This public acknowledgement redefined the conversation around UFOs. What was once dismissed as fringe science became a subject of serious national security concern. Scientists, intelligence officials, and elected lawmakers alike began to ask the same questions that UFO researchers had pondered for decades. What are these objects? Where do they come from? And who, or what, is behind them? The release of this footage, combined with the gravity of first-hand pilot testimonies and the continued work of government offices, such as the UAP Task Force, shifted UFOs from speculation into the realm of active, ongoing investigation. For the first time in modern history, the search for answers about these strange aerial intrusions is no longer just a civilian fascination, but a sanctioned, legitimate government inquiry into a mystery. Evelyn's encounter in 1920s Florida remains one of the most visually unique and emotionally compelling alien contact stories ever documented. She was just 9 years old when the incident occurred, playing outside alone on the grounds of her school in Pasco County. What began as an ordinary afternoon turned into an extraordinary memory that would stay with her for the rest of her life. She first noticed an uncanny, glowing egg-shaped object sitting silently in the grass. Unlike most UFO reports that involve fast-moving lights or high-altitude aircraft, this object was grounded, quiet, and radiant with a blinding white light. Evelyn believes she may have blacked out or lost time, as her memory jumps forward to the moment when the light dimmed and the object had transformed into what she described as a metallic, saucer-like craft. It was not sleek or futuristic, but old, worn, and almost rustic in its appearance, an odd contrast to the high-tech expectations often associated with extraterrestrial vehicles. Then, the hatch opened, and out came the entities. They were tiny, shorter than she was, and resembled walking flowers with faces located where the petals would normally bloom. Evelyn said they looked animated, as if they were made of some kind of mechanical or robotic structure, yet they moved in a coordinated and purposeful manner. She felt no fear, only fascination. As a child, she associated flowers with innocence, and perhaps this made the encounter less frightening and more surreal. The figures did not use their mouths to speak. Instead, Evelyn said she heard them in her mind. They told her that dangerous experiments were happening in the school's science building, and they needed to stop them. Strangely, they asked her to help move a small device, which she thought might be some kind of weapon, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't move it. The figures didn't seem angry or upset, just quietly disappointed. Before leaving, they told her they would return in 35 years. Evelyn remembered that promise for the rest of her life, but they never came back. Decades later, in the 1970s, she finally told her story to a local newspaper reporter. She felt the world was more open to unusual ideas by then, less likely to mock, and more willing to listen. Her account drew interest from UFO researchers, many of whom attempted to uncover suppressed memories through hypnosis, though with limited success. To this day, Evelyn's story, known in UFO circles as the Dade City Flowers, stands as a haunting, imaginative, and deeply sincere account of contact. Whether a child's innocent misunderstanding or an extraordinary encounter, it continues to attract those who hear it. In the early hours of a quiet night in 1981, deep in the rural outskirts of Olden, Denmark, a young man known only by the initials PN experienced one of the country's most mysterious and chilling alien contacts. PN then, in his early 20s, was on his way to his warehouse job, driving along a forest-lined road. At precisely 2:10 a.m., something inexplicable occurred. His car suddenly stalled. There had been no mechanical warnings or environmental triggers, just a sudden, unexplained loss of engine power. But what unfolded next pushed the limits of rational understanding. As the vehicle coasted silently down a slope toward a T-junction, PN instinctively hit the brakes, bringing the car to a stop. In that eerie stillness, he saw an orb of brilliant yellow light hovering just above the forest floor, approximately 60 meters ahead. It wasn't a flickering or distant illusion. The object was clear, close, and unmistakably otherworldly. A ramp came down from the glowing orb and connected to the ground, leading to what looked like an open doorway. Inside the glowing craft, PN saw swirling orange light, almost as if the interior lacked solid form. But it was what he saw outside the orb that sent chills down his spine. Two distinct groups of entities. The first group consisted of 7 small, greyish figures, each standing under a metre tall. Their bodies were unlike any conventional creature, geometric in form, like 2 triangles stacked together. These entities moved quickly and deliberately, collecting soil and vegetation samples, then handing them to an unseen figure inside the craft. The second group was even more unsettling. These were 3 taller beings, standing guard in complete silence. 2 were stationed at the top of the ramp, while the third hovered at its base. Unlike their smaller counterparts, these sentinels did not walk. They glided effortlessly above the ground. PN later described them as holding unusual devices, which could have been instruments or weapons. Their posture, composure, and mechanical grace gave off a clear sense of control and watchfulness. As PN sat frozen in his car, trying to process what he was seeing, something caught his eye. A taxi parked nearby with its headlights blinking rapidly. Was it signaling him? Was it warning the beings? He would never know. At that moment, the orb's inhabitants noticed him. The sentinels turned in unison and began gliding directly toward him, their motion terrifyingly smooth and fast. In a panic, PN turned the key, and to his astonishment, the car started without issue. He accelerated away, closely following the taxi as it sped through the winding countryside. Eventually, the entities stopped at a bridge and merely watched him leave, disappearing as he rounded a bend. Though physically unharmed, PN would never be the same. Over the following years, he reported developing a precognitive sense, experiencing vivid flashes of events before they occurred. He kept his story hidden for over a decade, sharing it only with family until Scandinavian UFO Information, SUFOI, began an investigation in 1996. The group interviewed PN and attempted to find the unknown taxi driver by placing ads in local papers, but no one ever came forward. Despite the lack of physical evidence, SUFOI investigators found PN entirely credible. His demeanour was calm, his recollections vivid, he sought no fame, no publicity, and no monetary gain. The uncanny geometry of the figures, the hovering technology, and the supposed psychic aftermath all combined to make this one of the most unique and under-discussed alien encounters in Scandinavian history. In 2005, a surreal sighting in Walla Walla, Washington, became one of the most remarkable sightings in recent cryptozoological and UFO lore. It not only challenged our understanding of flight and biology, but also blurred the boundaries between folklore, extraterrestrial theory, and psychological experience. The anonymous witness was driving along Highway 12 northeast of Walla Walla when he first noticed what he assumed was a large plastic bag drifting in the wind. The figure had a distinct humanoid shape, tall, bulky, and covered in thick hair. But instead of walking, it floated silently and steadily across the sky above power lines. The witness estimated its height to be at least 12 feet. Beneath it, 3 glowing red orbs appeared to be attached or tethered in some way, seemingly serving as propulsion devices or a kind of anti-gravity mechanism. Most terrifying of all, the entity appeared to be carrying the body of a dead dog, tied to its side with a rope, its lifeless form swinging with every drift of movement.
What really interests me are some of the weirder aspects of the Bigfoot phenomenon, where people have claimed to have seen these creatures and they've sort of vanished in a flash of light, or they've literally just almost dissolved, or they've been seen in conjunction with strange little balls of light flitting around the woods, sort of the size of tennis balls, maybe sometimes the size of a basketball.
The creature's head, covered in hair, turned toward the witness. Its movement was unnatural. Its head rotated independently of its body, much like an owl or surveillance drone, suggesting a skeletal or mechanical flexibility well beyond any known animal or human. The witness, gripped with a mix of horror and awe, pulled his vehicle over, exited, and attempted to follow the being as it floated toward a nearby silo. He managed to view it again from a closer distance, just 50 yards away before it silently disappeared into the forest canopy. The description bears striking similarities to previous reports of Batsquatch, a creature reportedly seen flying around Mount St. Helens after its catastrophic 1980 eruption. Batsquatch is typically described as a 9-foot-tall humanoid with bat-like wings, glowing red eyes, and a body covered in blue or black fur. Sightings over the decades have emerged from Washington, Oregon, and even California, always in remote mountainous regions. Some have speculated it could be an interdimensional being, a military experiment gone rogue, or a form of extraterrestrial surveillance drone that mimics local folklore, while skeptics point to misidentification, hoaxes, or even hallucinations. The emotional clarity with which the Walla Walla witness described the encounter suggests otherwise. Like many cryptid and UFO stories, this event leaves behind no physical evidence, only psychological residue and endless questions. Is Batsquatch real? Or are we glimpsing something stranger, something just beyond the veil of our understanding?
We are.
The first time someone sees Bigfoot run across the road, they see an animal, an undiscovered ape. After investigating the topic for decades, if they stay with it, their thinking is probably going to evolve. Certainly did for me.
There is a strong case to be made that Bigfoot, or as they are called by native people, Sasquatch, are in fact non-human intelligent alien.
In the world of alien encounter lore, few stories are as visually unusual and emotionally raw as the one reported by Claude Edwards, a farmer from the small town of Tuscumbia, Missouri. The incident took place on the 14th of February, 1967, and though it didn't make national headlines, it has lived on in UFO circles for decades due to its sheer strangeness and the character of the man who reported it. Claude Edwards was no dreamer or thrill seeker. He was a grounded, pragmatic farmer known for his hard work and simple life. On that cold Valentine's Day morning, he stepped outside to begin his usual chores. Immediately, something felt off. The barnyard was eerily silent. Normally, noisy livestock stood huddled in the corner of a pasture, their attention fixed on a field just east of the barn. As Edwards followed their gaze, he saw something that would forever alter his view of the world. Resting in the nearby field was a large, mushroom-shaped object, dull grey-green in colour and metallic in texture. It stood about 18 feet in diameter and 8 feet tall, supported by a central tube or column. Around the base of this object were several small beings, each around 3 feet tall, moving quickly and erratically beneath the craft. Edwards described them as grey-green in colour, with large black eyes, though he noted that these may have been goggles and small protrusions near their mouths that resembled breathing apparatuses. Their movements were flailing and spastic, as if unaccustomed to Earth's environment. Edwards was not afraid. He was furious. Something unknown had landed on his land, and it had clearly disturbed his animals. Without hesitation, he climbed a fence and began approaching the object, picking up large rocks as he went. But as he got within 15 feet, he encountered something completely unexpected, an invisible barrier, a force field that blocked his path. It wasn't hot or cold, didn't shimmer or buzz, but it was undeniably there. He could walk no further. Determined to make a stand, Edwards threw a rock at the craft. The rock hit the invisible wall, ricocheted silently, and fell to the ground. At that moment, the small entities retreated underneath the mushroom-like object. The entire craft began to tilt and shift slightly, as if adjusting its balance, before it lifted off the ground without making a sound, then ascended rapidly into the sky. Within seconds, it had vanished completely from sight. Shaken but not deterred, Edwards kept quiet about the incident for years, telling only his family. It wasn't until his brother reached out to UFO investigator Ted Phillips, a prominent field researcher at the time, that the story came to light. Even then, Edwards insisted on anonymity, fearing ridicule from neighbours and the press. Despite its absurd-sounding details, penguin-like aliens and force fields, Edwards' account has been regarded by researchers as genuine and emotionally authentic. He didn't seek attention, and he never changed his story. For many, that sincerity speaks louder than physical evidence. His encounter remains one of Missouri's most unique UFO reports, a tale not just of uncanny creatures and spacecraft, but of a man defending his land against the incomprehensible, armed with nothing but rocks and resolve. Among the countless reports of alien sightings, some terrifying, some mysterious, and some beyond rational comprehension, few are as strangely iconic as the case of Joe Simonton, a plumber from Eagle River, Wisconsin. On the surface, Simonton's story may sound like the setup for a joke. Aliens land in his driveway and offer him pancakes in exchange for water. But this light-hearted premise masks what is perhaps one of the most earnest and persistent UFO cases in American folklore. To this day, the pancake incident remains one of the most unusual, yet sincerely told, close encounters in UFO history. The incident occurred around 11 a.m. on the 18th of April, 1961. Joe Simonton was reportedly washing dishes in his modest rural home when he heard a high-pitched screeching sound, something like car tires on wet pavement. Curious, he stepped outside to investigate and was stunned to find a shining metallic saucer, approximately 30 feet in diameter and 12 feet high, descending vertically into his driveway. The craft hovered silently just a few feet above the ground, balanced on what looked like landing struts. As Simonton approached, a hatch opened, revealing 3 short humanoid creatures inside. They were dark-haired, with olive complexions, and wore black, tight-fitting one-piece uniforms. One of the aliens held out a metallic jug and gestured in a way Simonton understood as a request for water. Without hesitation, he retrieved water from his basement pump and handed it back. In what can only be described as interstellar courtesy, the humanoid being returned with 3 small pancakes, which had been cooked on a flameless griddle inside the saucer. The pancakes were thin, perforated, greasy, and hot. Joe, perhaps out of politeness or curiosity, took a bite. He later described the taste as dry and unappealing, like cardboard. He noted that the texture was uncanny, more like a rubbery cracker than actual food. Simonton didn't think much of it until he reported the incident. The media picked it up quickly, and soon UFO researchers, journalists, and skeptics were all investigating. He turned over the remaining pancakes to local Judge Franklin Carter, who sent them to various labs for analysis, the Food and Drug Laboratory of the US. Department of Health tested the samples and confirmed that they were made of buckwheat flour, starch, fat, and hydrogenated oil, all ordinary Earth ingredients. No eerie minerals, no exotic isotopes, no radiation. Still, the story refused to go away. Joe was ridiculed in the press, often portrayed as the crazy chicken farmer, though he was in fact a plumber who kept chickens as a hobby. He never changed his story, never profited from the incident, and never embellished the details. When questioned by skeptics and journalists, he remained calm, consistent, and entirely sincere. Some believe the story was a hoax, a fantasy, or a misinterpretation. Others, especially within the UFO community, see it as an authentic close encounter, not with the cold, emotionless aliens of science fiction, but with something oddly familiar and deeply human. After all, what could be more universal than the act of sharing food in return for help? The Joe Simonton case remains a singular event in UFO history, a bizarre, oddly touching tale that blends the surreal with the domestic. Whether real, symbolic, or misunderstood, it challenges our assumptions about what alien contact could look like. Pancakes from space may sound absurd, but sometimes it's the absurd that brings us closest to the truth. The field of ufology is often divided into 2 realms, the credible and the unbelievable. On one hand, there are radar, confirmed sightings, military pilot testimonies, and government-sanctioned reports that command mainstream attention and lend legitimacy to the broader conversation. On the other hand, there are the stories too eerie, too whimsical, or too absurd to fit into conventional frameworks. Tales of robotic flower aliens, floating geometric entities, interstellar pancakes, and spacefaring penguins. These are the cases that exist on the margins of ufology, and yet they may hold the most profound insight of all. Dismissed as fantasies, hoaxes, or hallucinations, these bizarre encounters are rarely taken seriously by academics or scientific researchers. But to write them off entirely is to ignore something essential about how humans experience the unknown. These stories do not just describe physical anomalies, they capture emotional reactions, psychological disturbances, and moments of profound existential disorientation. In most of these cases, The witnesses are ordinary individuals, farmers, plumbers, drivers, and children who gain nothing from speaking out. Many endure mockery, social isolation, or even financial loss after coming forward. What's remarkable is that many of these people remain unwavering in their accounts for years, even decades. They are not seeking fame, they do not change their stories, and often they are haunted not just by what they saw, but by the world's refusal to believe them. Their sincerity invites a deeper question. What if they're telling the truth as they perceived it? And more intriguingly, what if their perception, filtered through human cognitive limits, distorted something real but beyond comprehension? Our understanding of extraterrestrial life is shaped by cultural archetypes, the classic grey alien, the insectoid, the humanoid invader. These ideas are rooted in science fiction, militarism, and our own anthropocentric lens. But what if intelligent life evolved along entirely different lines, not just biologically, but psychologically? If such creatures chose to contact us, would they resemble our expectations? Or would they take forms that subvert them entirely? Flower-headed robots, floating triangles, penguins with breathing tubes. More provocatively, what if these beings are not just interacting with us, but studying us? Not our biology, but our perception, our mental frameworks, fears and boundaries. If an alien intelligence wanted to test the limits of human belief, what better method than to present itself in the most confusing, symbolically loaded ways? To appear, not as conquerors, but as pancakes and plants? Perhaps these encounters are not just failed contact attempts, but deliberate experiments in perception, pushing us to question the nature of reality itself. In the end, these fringe cases may not be outliers. They may be invitations to expand our understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and reality. The absurdity might not be a sign of untruth, but a byproduct of something we were never meant to fully understand, at least not yet. If we hope to grasp the truth behind UFOs, we must learn to look not just to the skies, but into the uncharted territory of the human mind. In a world obsessed with rational explanations, these stories sit uncomfortably at the edge of what we accept as possible. Yet despite their absurdity, or perhaps because of it, they remain some of the most compelling entries in the history of alien sightings. Whether these are misunderstood truths, psychological anomalies, or glimpses into something far beyond human comprehension, one thing is certain: the people who experienced them truly believed they saw something extraordinary. So the next time you hear a tale that sounds too eerie to be real, ask yourself, what if the bizarre isn't fiction, but a different kind of truth we're not yet ready to understand? The sky may not just be hiding answers, it may be reflecting the limits of our imagination. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next unbelievable story,